Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bombermonth. Let me ask you this. Who doesn't like a puzzle game once in a while?
Something to pop in to cheer you up and even soothe you in a welcoming way. Bomberman is no exception with the Panic Bomber series, but for whatever reason these games aren't often talked about. The Bomberman land games are more talked about than these, and that's another spin-off.
Well, I'm tired of waiting and not making an on-screen appearance. So let's find out. This is the Panic Bomber series.
In the 22nd of December 1990.
何聞きたいやつには聞かせてやればいいじゃねえか。聞かせてやればいいって？ 2 曲目はビービーガーガー鳴るだけだべな。だから聞きたいやつはって言ってたろうが。なんだよやるってか。
So the game's story is that Bagura is back again, but this time he just wants to ruin Bomberman's day. Well, why, I might hear you ask?
I don't know, it's honestly really stupid.
But with his floating castle and a group of goons to cause a ruckus, including Black Bomber. Did he seriously not learn his lesson? My god, he's more indecisive than Ed from Ed, and Eddie.
I'm a woodpecker. Except with dirt.
Golem Bomber and Pretty Bomber are also there. Where the rest of the dastardly bombers are, I'm not sure. So, it's up to White Bomber to stop him and restore peace. So the game is a puzzle game, duh, where bomber heads fall from the top, Tetris style, and you have to chain 3 of the same color. If you have too many bomber heads overflowing, you lose, and have to try all over again. Along with bomber heads, bombs will also occasionally drop. A big one if enough damage is caused, and a rare red one only obtainable via luck, even when losing. Speaking of damage, bombs can also be used for chains and can also cause rubble to appear on the opponent's side to essentially throw them off. In the story mode, you go through 16 opponents thanks to the world map that ends up being pretty linear. I'm going to have to give it to them though. With this much variety, they seriously took advantage of the graphics. Look at this! It's so charming and colorful, it's making my eyes bleed. It's also so gosh darn cute. The controls are actually really simple. You just have one D-pad and a button. That's it. And because of that, I'd say it's really easy to get the hang of and even master the game. I'd even go as far as to say it's perfect fit for speedrunning. With that being said, I wish the story mode had more art and in-between cutscene that isn't just White Bomber moving spots. Aside from the few already in the game, to further expand the minimum ones that are already there. The other mode is multiplayer.
Hey, Paul!
What?
So for this mode, think of it like 2 human players playing against each other instead of 1 human playing against a computer. It can either be the most fun or the most frustrating multiplayer of all time. There is no middle ground. While it does slightly hurt it, I'd say that's even more of a reason to play it with someone. It's like a box of chocolate. Insert or reuse Forrest Gump quote here. Isn't that right, Paul? That's right.
So overall, I'd say that this is one of the more underrated puzzle games worth checking out. Now, there was also a version released on the Neo Geo the same year, but it's a bit of a downgrade, so I recommend sticking to the PC Engine version. The next game released a year later on the 1st of March, it was Super Bomberman Panic Bomber W.
Hey, what does the W even stand for? War? Winner? Watermelon? Were you? What really? See, what does it even stand for?
This was only released on the Super Famicom and takes place after Super Bomberman 2. So naturally, White Bomber would want to treat himself with a lovely vacation to the South Island after being, held hostage. Unfortunately for him, that's not exactly what's going to happen. You see, the world bombers, I get it, have decided to cause chaos by wreaking havoc across the world, so that vacation is going to have to be put on hold. Since the Super Famicom isn't as powerful as the PC Engine, the graphics were obviously going to take a hit, but fortunately, the graphics actually weren't too shabby. You even get these great faint background where Bomberman is doing what he was actually trying to do. The controls have been made a lot more comfortable and precise, although I will miss the voices. And I'm not sure how to feel about the world bombers essentially being stereotypes, but the design are cool. Even though Blaster Bomber looks like Bob Marley, Metal Bomber looks like a cross between Foo Fighters, Green Day, and Goth style. Gunman looks like Linkara if he decided to give up comic reviews and become a cowboy instead. Karaoke Bomber looks like Samurai Jack if he always had his eyes shut while becoming a singer instead of a samurai. And Animal Bomber
Is your local furry.
While I like the music in Bomberman Panic Bomber, here they are even better. It's pure bliss to the ear. It is that good. The difficulty of this is also a little more difficult than Bomberman Panic Bomber, but not by much. Well, except when getting the true ending with heart. To put it simply, it becomes much more difficult. Now later on, the story mode, it turns out the world bombers were actually brainwashed by Space Bomber, who never appears in another game after this, just like Nitrous Oxide from Crash Team Racing. Actually, I think even he had slightly more appearances than Space Bomber. Huzzah! Well, the only mode left to talk about is the multiplayer.
Hey Paul, I'll give you $20 if you come and play with me.
The multiplayer pretty much remains identical to its PC Engine counterpart with a few minor differences to really set it apart. There isn't really one that's necessarily superior, but it still remains either the most fun for the most frustrating multiplayer of all time. Although in this version, it's been toned down quite a lot, so I'd say start with this one for the multiplayer.
Isn't that right, Paul?
Where's my money?
There was never any. Ow! Sights!
So that was Super Bomberman Panic Bomber W. It's essentially a more up version of the PC Engine version, kinda like stuff earlier, and that's seeing it in the best way possible. So far, this is my favorite. The next game is Panic Bomber for the Virtual Boy.
Ah, sweet. I can't wait to see Bomberman in the sweet, sweet 3D world of virtuality. On second thought, this is exactly what I had in mind. And my eyes are starting to hurt. Ow. Ow.
A fabled golden Bomberman statue has been said to be shrouded in the deep, dreary, dark island of Evermist, where adventurers came in but never came out. There's even been a legend where by gathering the 3 celestial matters of power, the island saw open the gates and gained access to the statue.
So of course, after learning this, why Barbara would want to go there. So of course, after learning this, why Barbara would want to go there.
Unlike previous Panic Bomber games, in this one, the different colored bomber heads weren't used. Instead, different sprites were used, such as monsters or world bomber blocks, most likely due to palette limitations on the Virtual Boy. There's also a lot more attempts at being 3D from the opponents now, with full body animated sprites able to emote in the center of the screen, sweating and crying exaggeratedly, and etc. and etc. Chain combos have also been made faster than ever thanks to the Virtual Boy, which means being able to create reaching in and out explosions and effects. That sounds good and all, but when they use actual 3D models, it looks but ugly. I know 3D was still new at the time, but ew, those look gross. Although the background looks kind of trippy and I like that. But this game doesn't really suit with the Virtual Boy. Something like Tetris Effect really takes advantage of it being VR, but here it's the bare minimum, and even then, like I was saying earlier, the Virtual Boy doesn't really suit a game that needs quick time reaction. The controls are also a bit stiff and sluggish, not as good as the previous two, which is a huge bummer. The music is still good, but not as good as Bomberman Panic Bomber, and definitely not Super Bomberman Panic Bomber W. It also lacks multiplayer, which is a mega blow to its credibility. I'm sorry guys, but you're not missing much with this one.
One operation later.
This is the last time I let my eyes willingly get destroyed like that. I mean, come on, what were they thinking?
on the 17th of December 2001, Panic Bomber came to mobile phones. It's really the only game I'm not going to be covering since I, for the life of me, can't find it, ROM or otherwise. So unless someone still has the Japanese mobile phone with Panic Bomber Original, and Tyson Panic Bomber, then I can't really cover these ones. 3 days later came the Japanese exclusive Bomberman 64. In it, one of the modes is a Panic Bomber mode. In this version, it shows the high score for each try. If you wanted to brag about high scores for some reason. The game plays endlessly until the player loses. It's really addictive to try and survive the longest, and you can try again for however long you'd like. There's also a multiplayer option where up to 4 players can play at once in competition. You can even choose what type of bomber heads you wish to use, with the ones from the Virtual Boy Panic Bomber being optional. Even though it's much more like a bite-sized game than the previous 3, it's still a huge step up compared to the Virtual Boy Panic Bomber. In July 17 and 31 of 2003 respectively, Japan was introduced to Bomberman Land 2. Panic Bomber was one of the other modes available that wasn't the story mode. Here it's pretty much like a mix between the one from Super Bomberman Panic Bomber W and Bomberman 64, the Japanese exclusive one, but it looks more like a flash game and it's not as good as the two I mentioned earlier, with less than snappy controls and a lot of the charm sucked out. I'd say to also skip this one.
But finally, jump ahead to June 23, 2005. The final Panic Bomber game released on the PSP, only in Japan.
There is no campaign mode again. Instead, it's other modes from Time Attack to versus Common versus Friends. Now my problem comes more from the fact that outside of Time Attack and versus Com, there isn't really anything to do alone. That's what made the campaign mode in the first two so great. Not only were they fun, but you still had something to do when alone. For Bomberman 64 and Bomberman Land 2, I can excuse those, since they were already the bonus on top of a much larger game. But with Panic Bomber PSP, it is its own game. What's stopping them from putting in a campaign mode? Let's start off with Time Attack. You need to perform as much change as possible before overflowing under a time limit. This one is fun. You've got 2 elements that make you want to go fast. Performing those changes is satisfying, as usual. Booyah! The next mode is versus Com. It's essentially like if you took out one match from the story mode of Super Bomberman Panic Bomber W. Don't get me wrong, it's still fun, but it's the same thing over again. That's all of the modes. This is so bare bones, it's honestly not really worth trying out.
So at the end of the day, I can see why Panic Bomber never caught on. It's quite simple actually. You see, for the most part, they're all the same.
Yes, some may be better than others, but still the same nonetheless.
Which is a shame.
If they experimented more, this series would have gotten as popular and loved as Dr. Mario, Puzzle League, and even Tetris.
But as it is, it seems like a forgotten part of the Bomberman franchise. And with Konami under their leadership, it seems highly unlikely we'll ever see another Panic Bomber game ever again. I like to be proven wrong, but I highly doubt it. This was Joseph from Joseph World saying, I like puzzle games. No, no, no!
Where's my money?